Good evening and welcome to the March 11th, 2024 Eugene City Council meeting. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the access instructions listed for this meeting on the city's public webcast and meeting materials webpage. Tonight's meeting will include a public comment period. If you wish to speak during the public comment period and have not already done so, please fill out a request to speak form available on our public webcast and meeting materials webpage, or fill out one of the printed forms that are available at the entrance to this room. We'll accept those requests to speak forms until 7:35. These forms will be used to generate the random order of speakers and to correctly enter speakers' names into the public record. And for those of you who are joining the meeting remotely, you are welcome to email your comments to City Council. And as a reminder, we have a few simple rules of conduct. We don't allow flags, signs, loud or disruptive language, noise, or any conduct that would disrupt the normal process of the business of council. We ask that you keep the room quiet and respectful so that people feel safe speaking to the council and that they can be heard. And we're seeking to create a positive atmosphere for that kind of public comment. You're always welcome to wiggle your fingers in silent support. And again, if you're not feeling well or if you had close contact with someone who is ill, we either encourage you to attend remotely and certainly wear a mask. And I believe there are some masks available in the back of the room. And so with that, I call this meeting of the Eugene City Council to order, and we'll begin with our land acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards to our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. This land acknowledgement is a way of resisting the erasure of indigenous histories and of honoring Native communities by inviting truth and reconciliation. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. As we consider the impacts of colonization, we also acknowledge the strength and resiliency of displaced indigenous people. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as Kalapuya Ilihi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. They continue to make contributions in our communities here and across the lands. We express our respect for the inherent political sovereignty of all federally recognized tribal nations and indigenous people who live in the state of Oregon and across the nation. Thank you all. And as we do on this Monday evening, we have a few ceremonial pieces, and tonight I have two proclamations. The first one, recognizing Women's History Month. Whereas Women's History Month provides an opportunity to honor the generations of trailblazing women and girls who have fought tirelessly and courageously for equality, justice, and opportunity in our nation. And whereas throughout our history, despite hardship, exclusion, and discrimination, women have strived and sacrificed for equity and equality in communities across the country. Generations of Native American women were stewards of the land and continue to lead the fight for climate justice. Black women fought to end slavery, advocate for civil rights, and pass the Voting Rights Act. Suffragists helped pass the 19th Amendment to the Constitution so that no American could be denied a vote on the basis of sex. And whereas, standing on the shoulders of the heroines who came before them, today's women and girls continue to carry forward the mission of ensuring our daughters have the same opportunities as our sons. Women of the labor movement are achieving monumental reforms to help all workers secure the better pay, benefits, and safety they deserve. LGBTQI+ women and girls are leading the fight for justice, opportunity, and equality, especially for the transgender community. And whereas, despite significant progress, women and girls continue to face systemic barriers to full and equal participation in our economy and society. In 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, stripping away a constitutional right from the American people and the ability of millions of women to make decisions about their own bodies, putting their health and lives at risk. Disparities persist in economic security, healthcare, and caregiving responsibilities, especially for women and girls of color. Those who perform critical work, including those who care for our children and our families, are too often overlooked, underpaid, and undervalued. And whereas this Women's History Month, as we reflect on the achievements of women and girls across the centuries and pay tribute to those who paved the way, let us recommit to the fight and help realize the deeply American vision of a more equal society where every person has a shot at pursuing the American dream. Let us recognize that fundamental freedoms are interconnected. When opportunities for women are withheld, we all suffer. And when women's lives are improved, we all gain. Now, therefore, I, Lucy Vennis, Mayor of the City of Eugene, Oregon, do hereby proclaim March 2024 to be Women's History Month in Eugene, Oregon, and encourage all community members to observe this month and to celebrate International Women's Day on March 8th, 2024. My second proclamation is in recognition of Transgender Day of Visibility. Whereas on March 31, 2021, President Joe Biden signed a presidential declaration proclaiming March 31 as Transgender Day of Visibility in the United States. And whereas March 31 is a day to honor and celebrate the achievements and resiliency of transgender and gender diverse people and acknowledge their determination to live openly and authentically. And whereas transgender people still face systemic barriers to freedom and equality, including high rates of violence, harassment, and discrimination in employment, housing, healthcare, and public accommodations. And whereas the crisis of violence against transgender women, especially transgender women of color, is a stain on our nation's conscience. And whereas the City Council of Eugene has a vision of a community that is welcoming and safe for everyone, Resolutions 5174, 2016, including transgender and gender diverse people. And whereas the City of Eugene has the highest rank of the Municipal Equality Index, which measures how supportive an organization is of its transgender employees. And whereas, although we have updated our policies, we still need to improve our practices in every department and team so every transgender person can experience a sense of belonging in our workspaces and in the community. And whereas the City of Eugene has adopted policies to prevent discrimination against the transgender community, and whereas Eugene Police prioritizes investigating bias crimes, which includes those committed against transgender individuals, and whereas we are fortunate to have Transponder, a local transgender founded and led nonprofit in our city, and we benefit from the positive impact of the work they provide for our community. And whereas, whether or not one is a transgender person, family member, or ally, Transponder offers support, education, and connection to available resources. And whereas we recognize the bravery of all City of Eugene employees and community members who decide to live their lives without hiding their most authentic self. And whereas March 31 is an opportunity to acknowledge all the work and progress made while still recognizing there is much work to be done before transgender people will have the same access, rights, and safety others enjoy. Now, therefore, I, Lucy Vennis, Mayor of the City of Eugene, Oregon, do hereby proclaim March 31, 2024 to be Transgender Day of Visibility in Eugene, Oregon, and all people to work together in the coming year to achieve greater progress in respecting, protecting, and welcoming transgender people in our community. Thank you. Thank you. I was proud to read both of those proclamations and appreciate your acknowledgement of them. And with that, we're ready to move into committee reports and items of interest. And I'm gonna, I have, were you raising your hand, Mike? So I have, I could take a list of counselors here first to speak. Okay. I think, I think I've got everybody. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna kick it off actually and tee it up a little bit for counselors to speak. We as a city experienced a terrible loss last Tuesday. An esteemed community member, Dallas Boggs, died suddenly at work, and Dallas had played many important roles in our community. He was the chair of our police commission, a position that is very demanding and very important and very challenging. And he held that role with incredible capacity to listen to people, to keep that process moving forward, to respect people. He did his work with warmth and with strength. He was serving on my Blue Ribbon Business Economic Development panel, and when I first talked to him about that, he was a longtime business person, business owner, co-owner of Brenner's Furniture, and he not only jumped readily into taking on that volunteer role, but he did so saying, "I'm happy to do this, but I know other people who should serve on this committee." He always took the time to lift people up and provide them with an opportunity and make sure that voices were heard, and particularly the voices of people of color who often do not find themselves in positions where they're going to be heard on those panels. And so a number of us are wearing pink today because Dallas Boggs was quite famous for his very aggressive fundraising tactics, Men in Pink, on behalf of cancer research and breast cancer research in particular. So we're wearing pink today to honor him, and as counselors share whatever other items they have, they may also take a few moments to acknowledge the importance of Dallas Boggs in our community and our profound sense of loss that he is no longer with us, and our deep condolences to his family. So with that, I have Counselor Clark first and then Counselor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor, for that and for kicking off that tribute to Dallas in such good fashion. I too want to honor him for his service in multiple other organizations as well. The list was longer, and he served as a community asset, as a community leader, and someone that others could look to for his kind of inspirational spirit for wanting to get involved. And I certainly hope that his daughter Jada hears how many people were inspired by his energy and his willingness to work on behalf of others. Dallas was a good friend of mine for a couple of decades. And I was actually looking in my house the other day. He worked at Brenner's Furniture as one of the co-owners here. Every single major piece of furniture in my house I bought from Dallas at Brenner's, and I was looking at it the other day. Kitchen table, check. Furniture in the living room, all of it, yep. You know, my new bed frame. I mean, pretty much everything of consequence. He was the guy I would call up, and I admire him so much for what he did for our community, and the spirit with which he brought to being a father and a friend. And I, for one, will miss him very badly. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's hard for me to talk about Dallas. Like Councilor Clark, I've known Dallas for, more than 25 years. We worked together on several different projects. particularly in the African-American community. He was the one that got the Black Professionals page started on Facebook, which collected a lot of us in the community to each other. Some of us who didn't know each other became friends as a result of Dallas's efforts and his connectivity and being kind of that social and cultural maven that we all need in a community like this where there is no central neighborhood or central point for African Americans or other minorities to gather. But he was able to do that in a virtual space, and we really appreciate what he's done in that regard. Our condolences go out to his daughter. I remember when his wife passed many years ago. So this is a great loss for our community, and for many people who knew Dallas. Some people knew him better than others, but there's a number of us over the last few days that have had, I would say, very long and meaningful conversations about Dallas and the impact that he made in Eugene, and he will be sorely missed, and his legacy will not be forgotten. So,
Thank you. Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to lend my voice to expressing my appreciation for Dallas Boggs. I knew him as a man of honesty and integrity, and he always put this community ahead of himself, which I think is remarkable. He was not afraid to confront or to have conflict. Recognizing that conflict is sometimes what is needed to work our way through issues and come out the other side with a good resolution. This community will miss him, will miss his leadership, and will miss his presence. He was a big man, but he had an even bigger personality. And that's what I think I will remember most. I have a second issue I would like to speak to as well. Friday night, the mayor and I had the privilege of attending the Lane Council of Governments annual awards dinner. It was a very nice event. A lot of people were recognized who have made notable contributions to our city and our region. One of them was awarded the Outstanding Public Career, and that's our own Assistant City Manager, Christy Hammett. Congratulations, Christy. Thank you for all that you do. You too are a force of nature, and you get things done. I think it was a well-deserved award, and I just wanted to give you a shout out. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Counselor Leach.
Yeah, I didn't know Dallas, so I don't have, a heartfelt story, but anytime a public servant like Dallas passes suddenly, there's a sense of trauma, in our community. And so, there can be sadness and coming together is a way to defeat some of that. And I hope that we can all bond together and join together and remember a good man and a good public servant. I also want to speak to the Human Rights Commission. The commission meeting was canceled for the month of February, but I was able to, for the first time, attend the commission's homelessness and poverty work group meeting last week. And I just want to say this work group is filled with amazing people, of course, members from the commission, but also people with lived experience of being unhoused, and the people and the professionals that are serving our unhoused community. And they bring this depth of knowledge and experience to discussions about what is the right thing to do to support people out of being unhoused and into adequate shelter and permanent housing. So during that meeting, our upcoming discussion tonight did arise, and there were concerns. And so that, you'll see us speaking to that later. And I know that there are many people here in the audience that will be speaking to it as well. And so I just want to say I look forward to what our community has to say. And again, appreciation for not just our homelessness and poverty work group, but all of our boards and commissions and volunteers who help to create a good community.
Thank you. Counselor Ye.
Thank you. I feel very fortunate to have gotten to know Dallas on the police commission. He is one of the kindest, he was one of the kindest people I have met. He always had a huge smile on his face every time I walked into the room. And that's just a great way to start a meeting, just in a positive place. And I will forever remember just the efforts he would go to make everyone feel welcome in the room. It was so important to him that everyone felt like they had an opportunity to speak and that they were in a place that they were comfortable. And that takes a lot of effort that you don't always recognize because he did it so easily. But he will be very missed in this community.
Thank you. Counselor Semple.
Thank you. I didn't meet Dallas until President's Day. I had heard that he was considering running for Ward 1, but we had not met or talked about that. And then he decided not to. But President's Day being furniture buying day and in really desperate need of a couch, I went downtown, support downtown business, and walked into Brenner's. And of course, who approached me but Dallas. And we spent an hour and 15 minutes together and I had a blast. Well, I bounced around on furniture and asked for measuring tapes and fabric samples. We talked about the city, downtown, Ward 1, our personal lives. We just bonded in a lot of ways really fast. And as everyone said, he had a huge, warm personality. And he really impacted me, as you can see. And after I got the message, I, of course, Googled and came to his Facebook page and was scrolling. And he posted pictures of people who come in to shop. And there I was. And at the end, he said, I enjoyed our conversation. And it just means so much to me. And the shining refrain through everything we talked about was his love and support of Jada and looking forward to their cross-country trip together. So after his amazing help finding, exactly what I needed very quickly, when I left, I said, well, done pretty well today. I guess you probably get a commission and it'll help with your trip. And he goes, oh yeah. So Jada, my best to you and my appreciation for the love, basic love that Dallas showed to the world. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Counselor Zelenka.
Yeah, I got to know Dallas on the police commission. He, the last 2 years, was the chair, and he did such a great job. It is really a really big loss for our community. He's such an outgoing and gregarious guy. He's a big man, so he could be intimidating, but he always listened and he always made sure, like Jennifer said, that everybody was heard. But at the same time, he was results oriented. He kept us on task and he kept us going and made sure we did what we needed to do. He often spoke from his heart and from his perspective. But above all, I think he was just a really nice guy who really cared. And Jada and family, and you should know that Gene's a better place because of him.
Yeah. Oh. Thank you. And Counselor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, colleagues and friends, for the powerful words of our community's friend, Dallas Boggs. My heartfelt condolences to Dallas's family and his friends and social network. And truly, he has made an impact. And when Dallas asked, you chipped in. You found a way to chip in, because I don't think I've met a better fundraiser than Dallas Boggs. So a moment of silence, please, I think would be appropriate. Mayor, I have a couple other points of interest. It was announced just before sine die that Representative Paul Holvey was retiring. And I want to thank Rep. Holvey, who was my rep for about almost 20 years. No longer my representative in that I live on the other side of Amazon now. But I want to thank Representative Holvey for being a stalwart champion for the environment, for working families, and for getting stuff done. If things need to be built, Paul Holvey was right there to make sure that it happened. Cranes in the air. You can probably point to Paul Holvey, had his fingerprints on it. So thank you, Representative Holvey, for your service. I also want to recognize quite an accomplished leader, moving from majority leader to Speaker of the House, state representative, now Speaker designate. Oh, she'd be Speaker of the House. She's Speaker of the House. She's Madam Speaker. I want to congratulate Speaker Julie Fahey, the youngest woman to ever hold the office of Speaker of the House in the Oregon House of Representatives. So I applaud Speaker Fahey and Representative President Pro Tem of the House of Representatives, Paul Holvey, on their distinguished careers and new roles in the community.
Yes, thank you for that. We have much to thank our state delegation for this time around. So we will have a moment for that another time. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you all, audience, for your quiet patience as we went through all that. And I think with that, I'm ready for the consent calendar. Oh, did you have an IGR report?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Committee
Yeah,
report.
go for it.
So thank you, Mayor. So I have the Intergovernmental Relations Committee report to end this short session that we had in Salem. And I want to thank Ethan Nelson and the members of the staff that have supported him in his efforts running up and down I-5 and representing the interest of the city of Eugene in the legislature. Thank you again, Ethan, for everything that you do. The IGR committee met on March 6th and received an end of session summary from the IGR manager as the session wrapped on Thursday, March 7th in the evening. Highlights include council's top 4 priorities were accomplished successfully. Number 1 was to secure financial resources in response to the University District Hospital closure. The city was allocated $1.3 million to support the operation of a basic life support ambulance for 2 years. Additionally, Lane County was allocated $3.2 million to support innovations in healthcare, which Eugene Springfield Fire Leadership will seek funding from this allocation for a new nurse navigation pilot program. Number 2 was to secure funding for unhoused shelters. The state allocated $65 million for shelters statewide, and most Eugene shelters are eligible to access this funding by the end of the biennium. Number 3 was to secure funding for infrastructure construction that will support housing. Eugene secured $6 million for water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure construction for the Crow Road area. And number 4 was to support investments in behavioral health facilities as part of Measure 110 Reform Bill, HB 4002. The state allocated millions of dollars for addiction treatment and criminal justice system improvements. And in Eugene, Willamette Family Inc. was awarded $4 million to build a new medical detox and resident services facility. These successes were possible because of the strong support from Eugene's legislative delegation, specifically Representatives Nancy Nathanson, Julie Fahey, Paul Holvey, and Charlie Conrad, as well as Senators Floyd Brzezinski and James Manning. We thank the delegation for their support of our community priorities. Additionally, as many of you have heard, Representative Hovey has announced his retirement after serving our community 22 years. Counselor Keating has already alluded to that. And also Thursday, Representative Fahey again was elected as the Speaker of the House. So please take the moment to reach out to our fellow elected officials to congratulate them on their service and leadership efforts. And Representative Fahey, we're going to be leaning on you a lot.
Just in case.
Next week, the United Front Partners of Lane County will be heading to Washington, D.C. for the annual advocacy effort. The IGR manager will be sharing updates from that trip and an end of session report in early April. In the meantime, in addition to the summary email sent to you March 4th, he will send out the initial end of session Eugene priority summary today. Our next IGR committee meeting is set for Wednesday, April 3rd. Please let your colleagues on the IGR know if you have any items that you would like us to review. And I apologize for not shutting off my phone. So that's my report, Mayor,
Thank you.
and go from there. And I'll cut my.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Are there any questions or comments on the IGR report? Okay, no, okay. Okay, so now we're ready for the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the items on consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. That passes unanimously. And we're ready for the first action item on our agenda, the Pitchford Plan Amendments and Zone Change. And I will turn to the Assistant City Manager to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the Eugene City Council is scheduled to deliberate and potentially take action on a Metro Plan Amendment and Refinement Plan Amendment that would change the land use designation on the subject property to light medium industrial. These amendments are necessary for the applicant's concurrent request to change the zoning of the property from E1 campus employment to E2 mixed use employment. These changes are requested for the subject property, which is in the west part of Eugene near the intersection of West 11th Avenue and Willow Creek Road.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll go ahead and have you put a motion on the table.
Move to adopt an ordinance amending the Eugene Springfield Metropolitan Area General Plan Diagram and the Willow Creek Special Area Study Future Land Use Map to redesignate the property identified as Assessor's Map 18-04-04-20, Tax Lot 00100 to light medium industrial and rezoning the property from E1 campus employment to E2 mixed use employment.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next action item, Chapter 5, Parking Amendments. And again, I'll turn to the Assistant City Manager to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, the Eugene City Council is scheduled to deliberate and potentially take action on a series of code amendments to Chapter 5. There are both as a result of regulatory gaps identified to address repeating parking violators from a work session on November 8th, 2023, and also to address increasing maximum allowed fine levels for parking related violations and removal of the maximum on-street parking meter rate, which are levels that were set in the 1980s. So it's just updating that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Leach?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I mentioned earlier that that there's some concerns about this ordinance that we are deliberating here. First off, I believe we can all agree that homelessness and just the sheer number of unhoused individuals in our community is probably the biggest challenge that our city is facing. I can understand and empathize with those that are incredibly frustrated with this situation. There's not a week that goes by that I don't help one or more of my constituents address specific issues in the neighborhoods to get areas cleaned up or address problematic behavior. So something needs to be done and urgently. But what I'm not going to agree with today is that the solution to this challenge consists solely in further penalizing homelessness, making it more challenging for people to get back on their feet. frankly, fines and impoundments simply don't work as a deterrent if you cannot avoid breaking the rules because we do not have a legal place for them to go. By increasing fees and making it easier to impound vehicles that are being used as a home, we are taking their belongings, sometimes even their pets, their medications, identification, and other documents. We're stripping people of their security and their safety. We're stripping them of a ability to have a locked door, which is so important and so vital for some of our most vulnerable, like our women and children and our elderly. So what do? We have sufficient mechanisms, I believe, to address most of the problematic behaviors that we don't want. And in fact, much of the frustration that I find in the community is for a lack of enforcement of the laws that we already have. So we're pushing people around the city without a viable option for them to be legal. So without implementing where and when and how we're going to allow people to park, we're continuing a downward cycle and exacerbating our situation. So we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars issuing, processing, and collecting fines, and 99% of people can't or don't pay this fine. So it doesn't make sense that we are suggesting to increase the fine by 600%. We're already wasting our city's resources fighting a battle that we're not going to win in this way. So let's find a solution quickly so we can reallocate that money and time and figure out where we can allow people to park. So I would like to not take any action tonight. I'd like to have another work session where we can continue to talk about this conversation. And I'd like to hear from our community members tonight about this, this topic. So I move to 1, discuss the proposed ordinance tonight, but take no action. And 2, direct the city manager to schedule a work session for council discussion of and potential revisions to this proposed ordinance.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Counselor Groves and Counselor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a tough issue, but the reality is the laws are already on the books. The problem is enforcement, and there's no consequences. And it's a small percentage of the people living on the street that are ones that keep popping up in the same places over and over again. There's a large portion that have figured out how to make it work, and they don't pop up and become problems. And the key is trying to figure out how do we protect not just the 3% that are unhoused, but our whole community. We have an obligation as city councilors to represent the community that we serve, and that's everybody. And when we focus just on one group, I think we're missing the point and not doing our jobs. So I'm fine postponing this and having more discussion, but at some point, we need to make decisions, and we have a lot of people that are counting on us to protect them. And I deal with this almost every day in my ward. We have one of the largest in West Eugene groups of campers that move around, and it's creating problems for residents. It's creating problems for employers that are trying to keep people working. When I took office, we had places where businesses were shutting down because they just could not get their materials in or their finished products out because the streets were so clogged. So we need to be aware of this. We need to be figuring out realistic solutions. I agree. Part of the solution is finding more places for people to go. I've said that from the beginning, and we've been working on that, and we've actually made good progress there. But at the same time, no rules and unregulated camping is not working, folks. And so I just want to make that point. And with that said, I also think it is important that we hear people. I've been making that point on some other issues that we're dealing with. So it would be contradictive to what I've been saying to vote any other way other than to support your motion, Councilor Leach. But I just want to give that cautionary note. We've got to come up with realistic solutions that are actually going to move the needle. And I think just anything goes has not worked well for us. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Counselor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Counselor Groves, all of that you just said. I would echo plus some. When I read Counselor Zelenka's email earlier today and his argument for not supporting the changes to the parking suggested, The problem that I had with the argument, and I was always under the impression, I wanted to argue, I wanted to fire back a response and argue with you, but I was always under the impression we're not supposed to argue the merits of something on email, so I didn't do that. But I agree with you that, as you have just stated, Counselor Leach, it isn't the most effective way to deal with the problem. But from my perspective, the problem is substantial for the majority of our community. It's substantial enough that we can't do nothing. Come up with a better idea. I'm all for it. I'm with you. Let's go. I would much rather find a better and a more effective alternative, but doing nothing is no longer okay. So from my perspective, we need to act, and I am very happy to listen to what people have to say tonight, obviously with several folks here and other ideas. But the idea of people, it being okay that people are sleeping in their cars is not okay. It can't happen. It's not safe for them. It's not safe in many ways for many parts of our community. And the majority of folks in our community have said, hey, enough, stop this. And we need to. So I will look forward to hearing the discussion and other better ideas for how to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Zelenka.
Yeah, thank you for putting forward that motion, Counselor Leach. I too am deeply concerned about the proposed increases in fines for homeless people parking and increasing our ability to impound their vehicles / their homes of these homeless people. If the goal of increasing the fines is to discourage this behavior, I don't really see how increasing these fines on people in deep poverty can pay, that can't pay, will accomplish anything. In fact, our own data from the city of Eugene, gathered by Heather Merrick, staff attorney for Lane County Legal Aid, she added some of this in the Register Guard article a couple of days ago, shows fines to discourage this activity have clearly not worked. Most of the current fines we've imposed over the past 2 years, year and a half, have gone completely uncollected. They just don't pay them, with uncollection rates of 85 to 100%. Like nobody pays them. So this isn't really surprising, because finding people with little or nothing who can't pay fines is very unlikely to change their behavior. There was one guy at Police Commission that we heard about who had 40 citations for camping, and the cops just stopped giving him citations because it didn't make any difference, and he wasn't going to pay the fine anyway. And there's nothing to indicate that increasing these fines or doing more in this regard is going to change any of this behavior. So we do know that imposing more fines on people that are in deep poverty makes it more difficult for them to climb out and to get to stability, to get a job, and to establish credit. Same is true for impounding vehicles, for which people in deep poverty cannot hope to pay their way out of getting their vehicle back out of impoundment. And if they can't get their vehicle back, then they're out on the streets or worse. And while we might increase impoundments, we could be, that would decrease parking violations. What's the cost of doing that? So I'm more than willing to work on solutions that will work, but it seems that the solutions or the proposals changed here won't make things better, are very unlikely to have the intended consequence or effect of reducing the behavior, and is probably taking a step backward in our effort to solve parking problems. So let's get work on things that we know work. We know that safe sleeping sites and parking sites work. I think, and the statistics are all there. That's not up for question, I think. But we just don't have enough of it. And so we need to think creatively about how to resolve this, because I agree, doing nothing is not an option, but we are far, far from doing nothing. We're the leaders in Oregon in terms of doing stuff to combat homelessness and address these problems.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Ye.
Thanks, Mayor. So first I want to thank Counselor Leach for bringing this forward. I was hoping we would get more feedback from the community about this, but we really didn't. So I'm really glad folks are here today so we can hear it, because I was honestly surprised by how little that we were hearing. And And also there are things in this ordinance that I can support and things that I cannot. So if we were voting today, I would have to vote no. So I think an additional conversation can get us a lot closer. And I very much agree with Mike that people sleeping in cars is not okay, but I'm not sure how taking that car away and now they're sleeping in a tent or a sleeping bag is better. So I also agree that doing nothing feels like not the solution, but like Alan said, we are doing many things, and it may be that we need to do more of those things, or maybe we'll have some opportunities to discuss new options, but this feels to me a little bit like just harassment until people leave, and I'm not okay with that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know Counselor Gross has another round. Is there anyone who has another first round? Counselor Evans, go for it.
You know, when I first came on this council 11 years ago, this was one of the top issues that we were facing in 2013 is homelessness. And we're still, we have done some things with our safe seat sites, you know, some other interventions that have proven that they work, but clearly it's not enough. And you know, I'm more than willing to have the conversation. I don't think that the motion that we have in front of us is appropriate right now, considering the fact that we can't enforce the law, even if we do try to apply it. We have no enforcement mechanisms. We have no way of helping the people that really need help out there. Our legislature is trying, and they're trying to work very hard at resolving these issues. But the bottom line is there's just not enough money out there to do it. And anytime we talk about, you know, raising taxes or raising funds or increasing revenue to address this issue, people immediately recoil at that. And they're sitting there saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you lock people up? Why don't you do that? It's not that easy. It's not that simple. And if it was, it would be solved by now. We have a not just a local problem and a regional problem, but we have a national problem. And until, you know, some of our leaders, and I'm not being overly critical because I'm part of that too, until we figure out that the real problem that we need to deal with is poverty and the lasting effects of poverty that continue to plague our communities, we're not going to get ourselves out of this mess. It's just going to get worse. I did a little research the other night on homelessness in Europe 1,000 years ago. If you think it's bad now, it was really bad then. You know, and what I'm afraid of is we go back to stuff they did in those times where people were actually selling their children in order to get something to eat. We're getting close to that, folks. So, yeah, let's have some more discussion on this, but let's understand that there is no simple way out of this problem,
Right.
and we need to have cooperation with our
Thank you.
jurisdictional partners.
Thank you. All right, Counselor Keating?
Thank you, Mayor. I really look forward to hearing what the community has to say, because I think I may want to park some of my comments until we close tonight or when we revisit this. And I want to thank Councilor Leach for the thoughtful motion. Councilor Evans talked in his IGR report about the $65 million that was allocated toward shelter operations, services of emergency shelters, as designed or as defined in ORS 0.782. I'm gonna get a little wonky here for a second. What's wild is that that allocation are for shelters that actually have heat and electricity, showers, hard surface walls and roofing, et cetera. Where there's a gap is the fundamental need for state and federal dollars for the transitional housing accommodations that we know work right here in Eugene, the rest stops, the emergencies, the safe sleep sites. The rest stops in our neighborhood in South Eugene, Nightingale, boasts a 70% rehoming rate. So we should be celebrating that, replicating that, and finding every creative way manageable to fund that. And while I applaud the legislature for the advances this last short session, there's a real need that still exists, a real need. So whatever the funding mechanism is, we need to be dedicating revenue toward replicating the successes that we see right here in our own backyard, providing safe sleep sites, more of them, providing more low barrier shelters, and providing more transitional housing, 15 or so Conestoga Hut transitional housing accommodations, as I referenced, defined in ORS 197.746. I really look forward to hearing what the community has to say about this piece. I can't underscore enough my appreciation to Councilor Leach for bringing this topic up. And I look forward, regardless of where you fall on this spectrum, let's find some solutions that don't criminalize folks for being, but actually put vital resources toward ameliorating what is clearly a crisis.
Thank you. And Councilor Gross, one more comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll try and make this quick. First of all, I want to say I completely agree with what Councilor Evans said. This really needs to be a two-pronged approach. And I also agree with Councilor Keating that I do want to hear what the public has to say. At the same time, I feel like the situation has been downplayed by calling it people camping in cars. People camping in cars is an issue, but it's not the problem that we're trying to address. It's 30 and 40-foot motorhomes. It's large trailers that are taking up public street space, and it's creating a problem. I mean, there's problems with sewage, there's problems with garbage. It's not healthy for the people living in that environment. And if you take the footprint that a 40-foot motorhome takes up, you can fit 3 micro houses in the same space. That's what we should be focusing on. But at the same time, we have to have our rules enforced. And right now the rules are there. You can't park in the same space for a prolonged period of time. And the problem with enforcement is there are no teeth. And that is the problem we are experiencing right now on the enforcement side. There needs to be carrots, but there also needs to be consequences. And right now I'm concerned that if we take away all the consequences, the problem's going to stay the same and or get worse. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. One more, and then let's move on because we have more to do.
Yeah, and I guess the problem of enforcing on people who have nothing to lose, you get nothing, you don't gain anything. And that's kind of where I was coming down with my email earlier last night. But I've said this many times, homelessness is the symptom. We're treating the symptoms. The problems are real. They're bad. And for people that are homeless and for the people experiencing the effect of it. But the real problem is the absence of affordable housing, the absence of mental health services, and the absence of substance abuse services. We're 50 out of 50 states for those last 2 things. 51st if you count Guam for mental health services. Problem is these problems have baked for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're not going to be solved overnight. And to fix homelessness, we need to solve the affordable housing crisis and the mental health crisis and the substance abuse crisis. So we're band-aiding this by dealing with homelessness. The solution, as Greg said, is not easily done. If it were easily done, we would have done it a long time ago. I've been working on this for 30 years. It's just a very world-class hard problem, but I'm willing to keep working on it. We know what some of the solutions are. We just need to have more of them.
Okay, thank you all for that conversation. And so with that, I think we're ready for one more comment.
One last,
Okay.
one last
All right.
thing, Mayor. We need a public shelter. And we don't have one in this community. And I'll just put that on the table again. We need a public shelter.
Okay, thank you. With that, we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. That passes 7-1. Again, thank you, Councilor Leach. We'll return to that topic and appreciate the conversation and look forward to hearing what the public has to say. And now we have one more action item, middle housing remand. And again, I'll turn to the Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the Eugene City Council is scheduled to deliberate and potentially take action on an ordinance readopting the city's middle housing code, which was previously adopted in the summer of 2022. Following its adoption, the 2022 Middle Housing Code was appealed and ultimately remanded back to the city to address compliance with statewide Planning Goal 11 for public facilities and services. The ordinance for this hearing addresses the singular remand issue and includes updates for new code provisions and consistency with state law, as well as Scrivener's errors corrections.
Okay, thank you. And I will turn to Council President for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Move to approve an ordinance concerning middle housing, including exhibits A and B attached thereto as set forth in its entirety as attachment A to the March 11th, 2024 agenda item summary.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I have Councilor Clark. Take it away.
I suspect because my colleagues are tired of this issue and it coming back to us, that it will likely pass this evening as the proposed solution. I'll vote against it. My concerns are what they have been all along, that we have not sufficiently proved goal 11. I don't believe that we know we have sufficient public infrastructure in order to handle the load. I think we're asking people to build on a first come, first served basis and prove then that, you know, we're asking them to carry the load to prove what we should know already in terms of our carrying capacity and see how it works out. And I think it's the wrong way to do planning. I think it'll still end up back in our lap again. I don't think our answer for this remand is sufficient. So I'll vote no.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, the Court of Appeals didn't reject our ordinance on its substance. They essentially said the background information on the record and the information in the record was not robust enough. As Elijah Kaczynski said, we didn't cross a T or we didn't dot an I. So the response of staff was to bolster that information in the record about how we actually do comply with Goal 11 and have complied for a very long time. As far as the infrastructure test that's been talked about, there's actually 3 parts to that where we actually check that. The first part is when you get a building permit. If you don't if you cannot connect to the infrastructure, you cannot get a building permit. So that's check 1 on infrastructure. Check 2 is that we have actually had for years a requirement that's new in the Middle Housing Code, but a requirement that you connect to infrastructure to get a building permit. And in fact, ours goes beyond that, just sewer and water to bike streets, all sorts of other kind of infrastructure. So it's even more robust. And then the third way that this gets dealt with is that I think some people think that every time we issue a building permit, there should be a capacity analysis done. That's not very realistic. And a capacity analysis is done on a periodic basis in our facilities plan, and to ensure that we have a sufficient capacity of infrastructure for 20 years. Last time we did it in 2017, so that's pretty recent in terms of infrastructure. So we still have a lot of buffer left to go. And so there's no need to update that at this time. There is sufficient capacity, but staff did go in this analysis and go look at whether or not there was sufficient capacity in our infrastructure. The law says up to 3% increase in density for middle housing. Well, they said, well, let's go beyond that. Let's test 5% increase in density because middle housing. And they found that we did have sufficient capacity in our systems for infrastructure. So it's not correct to say that it's that we're not addressing infrastructure and meeting goal 11.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed. 2. So that passes 6-2. Thank you very much for that. And we are at last ready for the public comment period. So thank you for your patience. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the city council on any city-related issues, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff to share the list of folks who have signed up. And I will just note, how many do we have on that list?
We have 33 speakers this evening.
33. So we can just barely get in. We allow 90 minutes. So anybody who is able to be more succinct in your presentation will ensure that everybody gets a chance to speak. Okay, go for it.
For sure. I will announce 2 speakers' names at a time. When you are called to speak, please state your name and your ward or neighborhood if known before beginning your comments. If you are announced as the next speaker, please move to the seat in the front row designated for the next speaker. When it is your turn, you may come to the podium. Please leave any bags you may have with you at your seat. If you have documents to give council, please place them in the basket near the podium. You will have 2.5 minutes to speak. If you are watching the meeting, the timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 2.5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted at the 2.5 minute mark. Please note that the use of profanity is prohibited and any instances of profanity will result in immediate termination of speaking privileges. Our first speaker this evening is Sabrina Siegel, followed by Terry Reed.
Thank you so much, dear Mayor Venus and Council. We need your help. I'm Sabrina Siegel in Amazon neighborhood. EWEB is forcing smart meters on our homes now and says we are no longer allowed to keep our safe and healthy mechanical analog meters. They are they've recently changed their policy and give us until March 13th to tell them if we will accept the smart meter or go without utilities. Some of us are absolutely unable to accept this device on our homes as it is life-threatening to electrosensitive people or those who have electronic medical implants such as pacemakers. We're being discriminated against. I am electrosensitive and cannot breathe when electromagnetic or radio frequency radiation is substantial, as my blood will not hold and circulate oxygen. I feel that I am dying in this situation, and sometimes I have to drive to the countryside to avoid and detox from these frequencies and sleep in my car, actually, if it's too high wherever I am. EWEB says they will turn the radio frequency part off for those that are opted out, but these meters still emit a large amount of microwave radiation as they are creating the mesh net, which EWEB doesn't tell you about that, the mesh net between all the homes, and are also producing extremely high dangerous levels of dirty electricity on the wiring of the home. I sent you the science on this earlier today via email. Our citizens need your protection right now. Please communicate with EWEB and direct them to allow people to have a choice of meter so that they can live safely in their homes while having utilities. Otherwise, our houses are in homes without utilities, right? And I have a son, he goes to school, he needs electricity. I mean, and I can't live in that situation with the smart meter. So we need your help. Please help.
Thank you, Sabrina. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker this evening is Terry Reed, followed by Martha Johnson.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Mayor Venice and council members. I so appreciate your conversation tonight because it feels like we're right on topic. My name is Terry Reed. I live in the Santa Clara area. I'm a board member of the Santa Clara Community Organization, and I'll be reading a letter written by my friend Martha Johnson, who will follow me. And this is about housing. This letter was also signed by the Santa Clara Community Organization Board. As you know, Eugene has the unfortunate distinction of being the city with the highest per capita rate of homelessness in the United States. Everyone is concerned about it, and everyone seems to have a theory as to how things got this way in our town. I and my neighbors from Santa Clara dug into our own pockets to purchase copies of the book Homelessness as a Housing Problem for you and your colleagues in our local government. We chose this book because it does a fantastic job of utilizing data to identify the root causes of homelessness and proposes solutions which target those causes. The authors, Greg Colburn and Clayton Aldern, asked an important question. Why do rates of homelessness vary so much from one city to another? They use data collected by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to analyze rates of homelessness and accompanying trends in 30 of the largest cities in the U.S. and their surrounding counties. And guess what they found? Homelessness isn't caused by homeless people migrating where the weather is milder or where better public services are available to them. It isn't caused by drug addiction or mental illness. Obviously, these things follow those who encounter homelessness. It isn't caused by poverty. The authors note several cities with very low median income where the rates of homelessness are also quite low. The twin problems that do correlate consistently with increased homelessness in a community are high rents, low vacancy rates. In short, when housing is scarce and expensive, more people end up on the streets. I so appreciate you taking up these topics. I really, really do. This problem isn't going to be solved overnight, and we do need to solve it, and we can solve it. It's a long-term strategy, and the
Thank you, Terry. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker this evening is Martha Johnson, followed by Victor Odlovac.
I'm going to complete the testimony that my friend Terry just began, and here are your books. How do we solve this problem of homelessness? With more housing. In 2017, Minneapolis leaders saw a trend of rising population in their city. They took action. They made changes in land use policy, parking requirements, and building heights to build a lot more housing of all kinds. From 2017 to 2022, Minneapolis increased its housing stock by 12%, while rents in that city grew by just 1%. During the same period, the rest of the state increased its housing only 4%, and rents went up 14%. Homelessness surged 14% statewide in Minnesota, but fell by 12% in Minneapolis. As the Minneapolis example shows us, increasing the amount of housing not only reduces homelessness, it benefits our community as a whole. We all want to see the problem of homelessness solved in Eugene, and we all want our kids to have housing that's decent and doesn't cost more than 30% of their paycheck. The solution to both problems is the same: build more housing. I and my neighbors in Santa Clara urge you to invest a few hours in reading this book. We believe it contains a lot of what's needed to help guide the creation of plans for the housing that our community so desperately needs. If you're short on time, look up Greg Colburn on YouTube. He has a lot of excellent videos that give an outline of his research findings. And we hope that the book you're receiving today will inform future discussions in local government on this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Our next speaker is Victor Odlovac, followed by Alan Stein.
Yes, this is kind of a follow-up from what I said 6 years ago, but I've got all the data now. I've sent a copy to all the council members, city manager. So the subject is smart meter measurement of radiation. So when the smart meter is turned off, opted out, it is still sending 13.850 milliwatts per meter squared. And there's a picture, you all got the picture, and that's what it is. And this happens because of this mechanism called switching mode power supply. So there's a tiny little computer inside the smart meter. If you put a 2 or 3 volt transistor type battery in there, you wouldn't need it. But instead, you've got to switch the power on and off and on and off and on and off thousands of times in a minute. And that is generating what they call this dirty electricity, but it's that number that I just quoted, that 15.850 milliwatts per meter squared. Now, if you go to Springfield, you know, they're a very smart place. They don't have money to throw away like Eugene. You go to the Lovely on 4th and Main Street, very nice place to eat. There are 6 analog meters there, analog. And there's a picture of that. And what we read is 0.290 milliwatts. Now, 0.290 is very different from 15.850. And remember, there's 6 meters there. Divided, you get 0.50 milliwatts per meter. And that's a whole lot less. And so in order to make myself safe, I am also EMF sensitive. You can see these little sores on my fingers. I had to pay $75,000 to get a metal roof on my house, to get metal siding, to get the soffits metal connecting, to have the house grounded. Then I have a picture there of, you know, where my head rests, and it's 0.016 millimeters. You know, excuse me, 0.016, let me see, 0.016 milliwatts per meter squared, 0.0.
Thank you, Victor. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker this evening is Alan Stein, followed by Dylan Plummer. Victor, your time is concluded.
Or speak, so just, you can leave us the documents. Thank you.
I speak here tonight to urge this group to stop allowing eWeb replacing meters that affect our health. As a citizen here in Ward 1, I'm really speaking as 3 different people. 1, I have a house on Almaden Street. I legally opted out, and they're telling me that they have to change my meter or shut it off. I also am a landowner in downtown Eugene on 1374 Willamette Street. There are 10 tenants there, and many of them opted out. What I really want to express, the third thing, is that I own Stargate Bookstore. I'm one of the few businesses there for 37 years this year. And I know by facts, especially what he just shared, that it's bad for your health. I have customers coming into my store crying that they live in apartments next to where they opted out and they became sick. Now they're crying again because they have no choice. So I have some requests for the city council. First, have eWeb stop smuggling in these unsafe and illegal meters and stop calling them smart meters, because they're stupid. And if you educate yourself, there's plenty of facts all around the world. 2, don't let my locally owned bookstore go out of business, forced out of business, because they said they will shut off my electricity if I choose to not follow that. I'm very passionate about it. I listen to my community. This is very important because they're not going to stop doing it. And there's plenty of facts. And I want to thank people from Family from Safe Technology. They're all volunteers. They have the facts. If you want facts, they'll give you a report in 48 hours that's not biased. This is real stuff, and they're going to 20G, and it's unsafe. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Alan. Our next speaker is Dylan Plummer, followed by Karina Schmidt.
Mayor Venus and Eugene City Council, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Dylan Plummer. I live in Ward 2. It's lovely to see everybody. It's been a little while. I'm testifying today in my personal capacity to encourage the City Council to take more time to hear from key stakeholders in the community before moving forward with the proposed parking amendment policy. Any policy to address concerns about vehicle residency should prioritize preventative measures that help folks access housing and/or safe places to park, and avoid punitive measures that further criminalize and stigmatize our vulnerable neighbors living in their vehicles and generally folks experiencing houselessness. I agree with the sentiments I heard from Councilors Ye, Leach, and Zelenka and Keating. Instead of further criminalizing individuals experiencing homelessness, I encourage the city to get to work to establish and strengthen preventative programs that keep families housed and allow folks living in their vehicles safe places to park, rather than to pursue punitive measures that will only further exacerbate the issue. I want to just echo what Councilor Zelenka said. Let's get to work on things that we know will work. And I also want to thank Councilor Leach for her leadership and for the motions that she put forward tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dylan. Our next speaker is Karina Schmidt, followed by Kathy Jing.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Karina Schmidt. I do a lot of work. I'm from Ward, I don't know, it's Laurel Hill neighborhood. I do a lot of work with the houseless community, and I have for a number of years. I do weekly street feeds. I help out at a number of camps, and I spent a while working at Looking Glass Station 7, which is a houseless shelter or a shelter for houseless kids. And I also used to be houseless. I spent about a year living in my van on the streets, and what got me out of the streets was not laws that fined me for existing the only way that I was able to, and it was not cops sweeping all the camps around me. It was the friends and the community that I made. It was friends who let me sleep on their couches and use their addresses to apply for jobs and food stamps. It was the church that let me repair my van in their parking lot. And it was the co-op that eventually gave me a lease. And the takeaway from this is simple, and this holds true for every person that I've seen get housed, either like within the confines of my job or elsewhere. We get through this by loving each other and by holding each other. Laws of this kind only perpetuate the trauma of being unhoused. They push this problem further down the line by pushing people out of the city and to the edges where they're invisible but still houseless. And it doesn't fix anything. Where do you want them to go when you're pushing them further and further away from their community? It makes the problem worse. And it doesn't help anyone get sober or housed. If we want to solve this crisis, then we need humanity and compassion, and we need to stop making life difficult for people who are just doing their best to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Our next speaker is Kathy Jing, followed by Molly Goulet. Is there Kathy Jing in the room? Okay, moving on. Our next speaker is Molly Goulet. Unfortunately, we only are taking public comment from those who are in person. All right, is there a Molly Goulet in the room? Okay, our next speaker is Sarah Pictionary, followed by Joe O'Hara.
Hi, City Council. It's been a long time since I've seen many of you, I think pre-pandemic, so it's good to see you in person and in this fancy new space. I am here to express my sheer disappointment and disdain that this council continues to spend staff time and resources and the time and resources of all of these people in this room right now to push back against thinly veiled attempts at continuing to harass unhoused people in our community. We both know that's all this is. We know what the intention of this is, and yet you continue up on the podium at the same time that you're telling us that it's to discourage people from camping in their cars as if camping is a choice. You're saying that it's concern out of not enough parking. We know what it is. It's the same thing as the dog ban was a few years ago. You remember that? Another thinly veiled attempt at continuing to harass, isolate, and push to the outside unhoused people. And unhoused people are any of us who happen to fall upon, I don't know, dire straits and don't have the support, or anyway, I'm only here to share that I don't want to be here. I have a family and a dinner and all sorts of things that I need to take care of at home. These people in this audience are likely people who are also spending many sleepless nights keeping people alive during ice storms and weather emergencies. It's frustrating. I know you all know what this is, and I think once again, I'm disappointed. I appreciate anybody who is on this council that is pushing back against what this is. We are only going to solve homelessness with more affordable housing. We have the tools to do it. We have an Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, which I've served on since 2019. Currently, our construction excise taxes are just 0.5%. We could up those to 1% or more. I know the city of Corvallis has a much higher construction excise tax. We could invest in, I know that there are some land banks. We could up the land banks and invest in community land trust. There's all sorts of solutions. And I know myself and plenty of other people in this audience have been providing them to you all. And yet we're back.
Thank you, Sarah. Your time is concluded.
Oh, too late. Thank you.
One last call for Kathy Jing or Molly Goulet in case they came in from the hall. No. Okay. Our next speaker this evening is Joe O'Hara, followed by Aya Cockrum.
Thank you for listening to all of us. My name's Joe. I'm a math PhD student and a teacher at University of Oregon. I'm also very busy, but when I saw this and was told that this was happening, I honestly felt really angry and like I needed to say something. So thank you for giving us time to talk about that. I want to state that I oppose the parking amendment policy. I honestly don't even think it needs further discussion. This is just a way to criminalize poverty, and it's not addressing the actual problem. I'm a problem solver. That's what I get paid to do. I teach people how to do that. And this is not solving problems. This is criminalizing poverty and harassing people. Thank you for pointing to the statistics that this is not proven to work and that this is not going to actually have some sort of solution to houselessness. I suppose if the problem that you're worried about is people being poor in public and being perceived, now you get to harass them. So that's maybe what you want, but no, this does not solve houselessness. I can't read how much time I have, but I'm just going to keep talking until you cut me off. I would like to highlight that there are a lot of streams of change, and you guys are working on some of them. A lot of people in this crowd are working on other channels, mutual aid, housing cooperatives, of which I'm a part of one. These are things that help reduce houselessness. Slowing rent spikes. Rent is getting horrible. One of my very dear friends became houseless and had to sleep in her car in San Francisco when gentrification got really bad. She was put in a very vulnerable position, and thankfully she had a car and was able to stabilize out of that. I honestly don't know how she would have responded, even if she couldn't have had somewhere safe to sleep at night through that. And finally, I just think about the privilege all of you guys are wielding here. And when you think about why people are becoming houseless, I know a lot of these people, and it's that stuff is expensive. Excuse me. I teach, and college is very different than testifying here. Let me tell you, please think about your privilege and think about the stories that people are telling, because these people have.
Thank you, Joe. Your time is concluded.
Okay, great. Please give your name and what ward you live in or your neighborhood. Thanks.
Our next speaker this evening is Aya Cockrum, followed by Sylvia Gregory.
Hello, City Council. It's wonderful to see you all. My name is Aya Cockrum. I live in Ward 1. I coordinate the Fossil Free Eugene Coalition, but I'm speaking tonight in my personal capacity, also as a mother and a former educator. I'm testifying today to express my strong opposition to the proposed vehicle camping ban being considered that was brought up by council this evening, and any measures that criminalize being unhoused in our city. City council needs to take more time to hear from all of these people out here, and I really applaud City Councilor Leach for bringing her motion forward, and for all the city councilors that spoke against such a ordinance. So vehicles can offer critical refuge and and unhoused populations that are living in vehicles is one of the fastest growing segments of the unhoused population. These vehicles provide protection, especially for vulnerable populations, including women, children, and elderly. This protection provides shelter from the weather and creates a physical barrier, both of which can save lives. Further, it is shown that increasing fines only exacerbate stressors that lead to houselessness, like debt and bad credit. And frankly, trying to collect fines and taking people's homes seems like it would create more problems and cost the city more money that could be put towards solutions. A member of my family was struggling with physical disabilities and chronic illness, which led to them living in their van. This space kept them safe while they transitioned safely into an apartment. Their story would not have had such a happy ending if they hadn't had this resource to draw on during this extremely hard time. Why limit a resource to a community that is already so exposed and faced with extreme hardship? I urge you to use and draw on solutions that all these folks have been highlighting to you all, creating affordable houses, safe spaces to sleep, instead of creating additional hurdles. You cannot penalize people without offering an alternative. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Aya. Our next speaker this evening is Sylvia Gregory, followed by Jesselyn Perkins.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing public comment. I'm here to testify, or I'm here to oppose the parking and living in one's car ban. I'm in favor of solutions that will really work for houselessness. And I think that the city of Houston, Texas has shown us the solution. And what they're saying is, what they've done is reduce their houseless population by 60% since 2011 by putting people in housing with wraparound services, actually. And they had 90% success with that. And what they're saying to other cities is, do not waste your resources on sweeps. Do not waste your resources on tickets for criminal trespass and municipal court appearances and so on and so forth, and fines, and banning living in your car, because it's not going to solve anything. The only thing that will ever solve this problem is creating affordable housing and putting people in housing. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Our next speaker this evening is Jesselyn Perkins, followed by Cameron Stringfield.
Hello, my name is Jesselyn Perkins. I live in Ward 2. I was born and raised in the Springfield and Eugene area, and I've worked in many different capacities in nonprofits. I'll name a few: Burrito Brigade, Eugene Mission, Egan Warming Centers. Right now, I'm a community organizer. I do a lot of work with the Eugene Free Fridges and various other mutual aid projects. I say that to underscore the fact that I've been seeing the unhoused population and how they're affected by resource scarcity in this community for my whole life. And I've seen how accelerated it's become and how exasperated it's become. I think a lot of people have done a really good job speaking on some of the statistics, some of the solutions, some of the, I oppose the parking thing. I think a lot of people have been doing a really good job talking about that. What I want to say is that we started out this meeting by talking about Indigenous folks and the history, about talking about Transgender Day of Awareness and Protection, about talking about women. And every single one of these populations is marginalized and further at risk when
poverty is a factor, when class is a factor. So when we talk about further criminalizing poverty, these are the groups that suffer. And that's an egregious hypocrisy to like claim to be protecting marginalized populations by continuing to criminalize poverty. I cannot state strongly enough how evil that is. The other thing that I want to say is that it's not just the individuals that suffer, it's the collective. The community health is intrinsically tied to our most marginalized. When you criminalize people for trying to get by, for being poor, for being hungry, you keep the resources that they need out of their grasp. That makes everybody less safe. A hungry person is more likely to have like a blood sugar crash and an angry outburst on the street. And that's just like really actually so sad. People that don't have what they need, like people are not the problem. The scarcity of the resources is the problem. And I also know that resources aren't as scarce as they seem, and we do have the power to come up with creative solutions. I really appreciated when you said that. We need to be creative. If neighborhoods are complaining about trash, put a dumpster on every corner. If people are talking about unsafe waste disposal, let's put in a service that deals with that. We have it within our capacity.
Your time is concluded.
To deal with this.
Our next speaker this evening is Cameron Stringfield, followed by Alan McWayne.
Mayor Venice, Eugene City Council, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Cameron Stringfield, and I live in Ward 7, and I'm also a member of the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition. I am testifying today to state my strong opposition to the proposed vehicle camping ban being considered by the council, and to any measures that criminalize being unhoused in our city. Since I have lived here in Eugene, I have come very close to becoming homeless with my entire family multiple times. I live with my mother, stepfather, 76-year-old grandmother, 14-year-old brother, and my very elderly dog. We would have had to live in my minivan to survive. The proposed amendment to the city code in front of the council would criminalize the many Eugene residents that are living in vehicles. I will also repeat what I asked you back in December when we were presenting a resolution for a ceasefire. How does a self-acclaimed city of peace exact this kind of violence and displacement on its most vulnerable population? Stay true to the principles of peace and respect homeless people of Eugene. And while I have time to talk, I just want to share my experience as well. Previously living on West 10th Street, which is right near Martin Luther King Park. By the way, Martin Luther King would not support this ordinance. He was very dedicated in his life to fighting against poverty and the mechanisms under capitalism that exacerbate that. But at Martin Luther King Park and on West 10th Street, we had a lot of people that were either homeless without a vehicle or homeless in a vehicle. And I lived on that street. I was housed, but I was very close many times from being evicted by men with guns and thrown onto this street with my family. And I will say that while I was living there, there were multiple times where I would come up and approach officers that were doing a sweep, that were criminalizing these homeless people. And I used to ask them, do you think that this is making anything better? And they would go, well, I've got all these people that tell me we have to do something. And I've heard that from counselors tonight. I have all these people that say we need to do something. But never once did I think that the solution to the problems around me was criminalizing them, and it didn't affect me. What affected me was the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Our next speaker this evening is Alan McWayne, followed by Stone W.
Good evening, councilors and Mayor Venice. Alan McWayne, Ward 1. I have a few more comments about the M Stadium because there are some key decisions this week. Now, last April, the master plan was put on hold, and one reason for that became largely hidden. The public doesn't know about it, but the consultant strongly rejected it because it was unprofitable, and they derived that data from ESG, Elmore Sports Group, the owner of the M's, their own economic analysis, which concluded that the stadium would lose $2 million a year. Actually, let me get that right. It would have $2 million in revenue with $2.2 million of expenses. So a loss of $200,000. Alan Benavides keeps asking me, well, where did I come up with this form? These figures, and I say, well, it's your own company that derived this. Since then, we haven't had any other figures to counter that. Now, in August, the county put it on pause for 6 months. That just expired last week with no action. The M said they would leave in September 30th, but they didn't. Now, in December, this council looked at the bond measure, and I know that one of the conditions was that there would be the financials provided. Councilor Evans wanted to know the ROI, return on investment. Everyone else just wants to know this. Pat Farr of the County Commission asked Steve Mokrahysky, what do we know? Last week he says nothing. So we're still waiting 3 months later. Last week, the county staff recommended that the whole planning process be reset, a reboot. And the councilors or the commissioners discussed that. There was no dissent. LEC manager Corey Buller was in favor of the reset while they're looking at all sorts of options. Commissioner Lovell says that this council is putting the cart before the horse. So I hope you consider that when you look at the options next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Our next speaker this evening is Stone W., followed by Dace Whiteley.
I would like to thank City Council for letting me speak here and those in this room for listening. My name is Stone and I am a resident of Ward 1. Up until 2 months ago, I had been homeless for 5 years, 3 of those being in my vehicle. I won't go into why, but I will say I believe most of us here are 1 or 2 tragedies from being housing unstable. On account, and I haven't heard anyone really talk about this, of the ordinance, I'm not going to say the numbers, no one cares, regarding the gray water being into the watershed. I agree it is a problem that the watershed can get dirty. It's entirely counterproductive to destroy the semblance of shelter that people have. And I'm so sorry. There are so many other solutions, right? It's very complex. You could put porta potties, you could have gray water stations for people to dump off their RV waste. There are so many options, and I'm not sure who thought that taking away anyone's transportation to a bathroom even would somehow improve the watershed. That is crazy. That is anti-homelessness in a very crappy environmentalism wolf's clothing. It's like it doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I don't know. It's just, if that was in effect when I was homeless, it might have buried me. I was very suicidal during that time. And I don't know if that's how you're trying to get homeless people to disappear. So, yeah. Despite our differences, we are all human and we must act with humanity. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Stone. Our next speaker is Dace Whiteley, followed by Abraham Kelso.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dace Whiteley. Thank you all for listening. This parking ordinance falls squarely into the category of that most beloved American pastime, punishing the poor for being poor, while we exacerbate the very problem we wish to solve, and continue to blame and wag our fingers at those on the receiving end of our incoherence, all in the name of public safety. What might motivate someone to park and remain in their car for a long period of time, perhaps overnight, somewhere which is illegal? Is it disregard for other people's well-being? Is it unabashed naughtiness? I can't imagine anyone in this room genuinely believes that there are people out there thinking, well, I could stay in my nice warm bed tonight, but why don't I go block a mailbox instead? Why don't we all do that? Doesn't it sound so appealing? Likely because we have the option available not to contort our bodies into small spaces and wake up cold and aching. Does it honestly make sense for us to congratulate ourselves about this, for being law-abiding citizens, and to punish those whose options have become sufficiently narrow that they cross this boundary of the law? The choice people in this situation have is what is called a bounded choice, one with no good options. When bounded choices are framed as free by people who have tremendously more degrees of freedom than those breaking the law, that's when you get into some really grotesque acts of power wielding that underlie many privileged people's gnawing sense of unease, whether they know it consciously or not. Ordinances like this, which give citations and impound vehicles of economically marginalized people, only push people further into the funnel of homelessness. That is a threat to public safety. The ignorance that drives those of us with more degrees of freedom to punish those of us with less for having less. That is what drives the erosion of civil society we see all around us. That is what has caused the situation which motivated the drafting of this ordinance. And I assure you, codifying it into law will most certainly worsen the very situation we seek to solve. I speak as a formerly
Thank you, Desa. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker this evening is Abraham Kelso, followed by Erica Dahlman.
Mayor Venice, City Council, and City Manager Maderi, thank you for providing this opportunity for testimony. My name is Abraham Kelso. I'm a resident in Ward 7. I think it's imperative that City Council take more time. I'm glad that you will, to hear from key stakeholders and the community before moving forward with any action on this policy. Policies under consideration by this council to address concerns about vehicle residency should prioritize preventative measures that help people access housing and/or safe places to park, and avoid punitive measures that criminalize our vulnerable neighbors living in their vehicles. Approximately 3,000 or so people are experiencing homelessness in Eugene based off of some numbers I could find. And HUD reports a vacancy rate from 2019 of around 2.5, and that may be around 2% for the Eugene Springfield area. And with an estimated 155,000 households, that equates to around 4,000 vacant dwellings at any one moment. And considering that over 80% of the fines issued between 2022 and 2023 went unpaid, it may be more advantageous for the city to consider a vacancy tax as a more reliable source of funding for the preventative measures mentioned previously. Additionally, I am interested in working with the city and other local partners to pursue state funding from the Community Resilience Hubs and Networks grants and/or federal funding through the Inflation Reduction Act to find innovative ways to provide more support for our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abraham. Our next speaker this evening is Erica Dahlman, followed by Ren Thornton.
Hi, my name is Erica Dahlman, and I am a resident of Ward 2. City Council, thank you for taking the time to hear my opposition to the parking ban ordinance. I'm a freelance graphic designer, artist, and musician. As a creative, I am consistently concerned with how I'll be able to afford my bills, especially my ever-increasing rent. If I lost my income within 3 months, I'd be living in my vehicle too, unable to pay the proposed fines. Policies that directly threaten the most economically vulnerable and already unhoused are a deep concern to me. Some of you mentioned wanting alternative solutions to this issue. I encourage you to speak to activists and communitarians who are on the ground of the poverty crisis. Many of them are here tonight. Instead of finding the most vulnerable in our community and criminalizing their only modes of survival, I urge you to put forth policies that cap rent prices, including RV sites, improve public transport, provide free addiction recovery, and help shift homes from the hands of career landlords to the hands of non-owning Eugene residents. I want to echo Jesselyn's sentiment. If there are waste disposal issues, offer waste disposal solutions. If there are long-term parking and access issues, talk to these repeat offenders and find real solutions for their real challenges. Fines and sweeps are not only expensive and ineffective, frankly, they're lazy. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Our next speaker is Ren Thornton, followed by Jeffrey Gordon.
My name is Ren Thornton. I am against this ordinance. When I was a child, my parents divorced, and visitations with my dad tended to look like camping trips in the woods, no matter what the weather was. My dad was living out of his truck and trying to keep it a secret from me, from my brothers, and especially from my mom, because if she or the courts found out, his parental rights would have been in jeopardy. My father worked for the Department of Defense, worked in the Pentagon in the wake of 9/11, and yet the 2008 recession and a bad divorce were enough to leave him temporarily destitute. Would fining him for living out of his car have helped, or only torn a family further apart? During your opening proclamations, you acknowledged the heightened barriers to employment, to housing, and to life that trans and queer people like myself face. According to a study by Williams Institute School of Law, gay people experience homelessness at a rate twice as high as their straight counterparts. Trans and all sexual minorities experience homelessness at a rate 8 times higher than their straight counterparts. Did the acknowledgement of these facts factor into the idea to find people sleeping in their cars? It seems that you as a council are at a loss of what to do about the homeless crisis. Criminalization is the easy path that brushes the problems under the rug, only to fester and worsen. Councilman Groves and Clark, you talk about handling the homeless problem on a daily basis. I too have done the same in multiple capacities as a volunteer with Burrito Brigade, and for a time as a security officer at the emergency room hospital in downtown Portland. I saw the homeless problem every day, and I saw how the hospitals barred these people from life-saving care, and I was made to be the enforcement arm of these policies. I wonder how we can work in similar capacities to fight the same problems, and we seem to have come to very different conclusions about what a solution will look like. You say you need a carrot on a stick, as the homeless people are stubborn pigs for you to coax into a home. I ask you, where is the carrot? Are people not punished already with daily struggles to find food, comfort, and hope? I went to an encampment which had been established for years to help them clean in the wake of the ice storm, but when I arrived, they turned me away. They saw no point in cleaning or bettering their living situation because they were going.
Thank you, Ren. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker is Jeffrey Gordon, followed by Bethany Cotton.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Gordon. I live in Ward 7. I'm speaking here today because Israel has murdered over 31,000 Palestinians since October 7th, 2023. The International Court of Justice has already issued an injunction stating that it is plausible that genocide is occurring in Gaza, and the evidence is growing. I bring this up today because it is time for the city of Eugene to institute a human rights-based investment policy for all future investments, with clear prohibitions against investment and business with vendors, institutions, and corporations that profit or participate in exploitation, genocide, apartheid, and military conflict. The City Council should create an 8-member socially responsible investments committee of citizen volunteers from each ward, who can be administratively empowered to maintain a corporate securities do not buy list for our city treasurer. Currently, our city policy is that a list of approved financial institutions and brokers/vendors are controlled solely by the city treasury officer. And the only directly prohibited investments from Admin Order 442203 are the, quote, the top 200 fossil fuel companies and, quote, cryptocurrencies. This policy is inadequate, undemocratic, and invites corruption. My proposal is modeled directly after a resolution passed by the City of Portland, which I printed for your reference. They created a 7-member council, and their do not buy list consists of, quote, corporations that engage in practices that damage the environment and health, engage in abusive labor practices, violate corporate ethical and governance standards, engage in extreme tax avoidance strategies, exercise such a level of market dominance as to disrupt normal competitive market forces, or contribute to human rights violations that undermine efforts to create a prosperous, educated, healthy, and equitable society. That was the theme of the opening speech today, was it not? And what everyone else is saying today. And I'll just say this, I'm sure you all remember last December when this room was packed with people here to lecture you. Get ready for more of that if you do not pass a human rights-based investment policy with haste. And with my remaining time, I just want to endorse what everyone else is saying here. Punishing the homeless is cruel. It doesn't solve the problem.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker is Bethany Cotton, followed by Jetty.
Good evening, Mayor Venice, councilors, and City Manager Maderi. I'm Bethany Cotton, resident of Ward 7. I'm a homeowner in the heart of the Wit, and I interact with my unhoused neighbors daily. Making sleeping in vehicles illegal is absolutely not the way to grapple with the symptoms of our housing crisis. I fail to understand how any of you think that making being unhoused more expensive, more stressful, and removing the degree of security that living in a vehicle can provide, especially for women, children, and the elderly, could possibly alleviate the crisis. The United States Interagency Council on Houselessness states that, in effect, more than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck and one crisis away from houselessness. That crisis could be unexpected medical bills, domestic abuse, job loss, rent increase, loss to fire, or other circumstance. Removing using vehicles as bridge housing may well drive more people who might have been temporarily unhoused into longer-term houselessness. It was below freezing several nights last week. Removing the option to sleep in a vehicle makes it more likely that these neighbors could suffer exposure-related illness or even death. Counselors have said that sleeping in your car is not okay and not safe. It is far safer than sleeping in a tent or on the streets, safer from violence, safer from weather. Impounding vehicles means impounding these folks food, clothing, and meds, depriving them of necessary medications to address health issues. It's cruel. Let's please implement additional support for our unhoused community members rather than attempting to hide the symptoms of systemic issues. Let's identify and make rapidly available more safe parking areas and ensure some are not affiliated with religious institutions. Why would you think that increasing fines on our most marginalized community members would somehow increase the likelihood of payment? Our city has a budget deficit. Won't this increase costs to the city to process the fines, tow and store vehicles, and process asset forfeiture? Finally, y'all seem surprised that community members weren't engaged. That may very well be due to how you described it on the city's website. You call it parking amendments. I doubt many folks read into that criminalizing houselessness. I suggest you be more transparent in how proposals are publicly described moving forward to encourage public participation in community decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. Our next speaker is Jetty, followed by Sarah Azariel.
Hello, my name is Jetty, and I'm a part of Ward 8. I'm a local advocate for humans surviving outside in Eugene. I recently collected items that I would need to survive the harsh elements. I left my comfort zone, and I spent 9 days illegally existing among the people that some of you seem to have a lack of compassion for. I say illegally existing because I recently found out it's illegal to sleep in a tent within city limits unless you have the homeowner's permission to do so, but only in the backyard away from the prying eyes of the public. During my 9 days, I listened, I observed, and I promised to be a megaphone for those that have been intimidated into silence. Living outdoors is pretty terrifying. I would assume that you all have some kind of personal experience living on the streets, because if you don't, what qualifies you to have any input on how to help these people? I met a few people whose homes were towed away, never to be seen again. The trauma has caused them is unrepairable. The people that have gone missing never to be returned, sold into human trafficking, and shipped from this country because they lost their safety to impounding will never be forgotten. The lives lost to overdose because trauma was too much and the only way to make it stop was to self-medicate were more valuable than your gentrified neighborhoods. I would highly suggest you all step back and reevaluate why you're sitting where you are. Gather up your pieces of humanity, put them back together, stop kicking the people who are already down, and treat others as you want to be treated. I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I hope you never have to experience someone coming to take away your most prized belongings, your home, and your dignity. And never forget that this is stolen land.
Thank you, Jetty. Our next speaker is Sarah Azriel, followed by Rebecca Amadeo.
Good evening, Sarah Azariel, Ward 3. We do have a homelessness crisis in this country for many reasons. It needs addressed, but that must be by supporting people into stability. The proposed amendment to the parking ordinance disproportionately targets one of the most vulnerable populations in our country, stripping resources from people that have next to nothing until they have actually nothing. It targets people with no good options on where to go, and instead of providing safe and legal places for them to park, it just makes their existence illegal, ramping up fines they don't have the means to pay. The only way this ordinance reduces the impacts of homelessness in Eugene is by encouraging the conditions that lead to their deaths or by putting them in jail for the crime of existing in poverty. This ordinance actively hinders homeless people from getting back on their feet by instead promoting their destabilization. A vehicle provides shelter, the ability to accrue belongings or resources, and a way to flexibly travel to resources and work opportunities. The increases to fines are brutal on people that already lack resources and are doing their best just to survive. You can't fine people out of being poor or destabilized. Increasing punishments on people with nowhere to go for being in the wrong place is to pursue an out of sight, out of mind solution that doesn't care that its solution to homelessness is to let people die so long as you don't have to look at them while they do, so long as they aren't inconvenient. I consider anyone continuing to support this ordinance to either be foolish, blind to how it will function in reality, or they do understand and are okay with their solution resulting in the criminalization, imprisonment, or indirect murder of vulnerable people. Use our taxes to provide more resources and spaces for homeless people, not for criminalizing poverty. We need more resources that lead to the long-term stabilization and housing of vulnerable people and the assistance to support people in accessing and maintaining access to those resources. We have issues with, you were talking about sanitary concerns. Provide legal, accessible options for disposal. It's where there is a lack, provide publicly accessible, free, accessible means of meeting that need. There's trash issues, but you have to pay to throw away trash in the state that encourages littering. It's provide options for them to meet the need that is creating an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next speaker is Rebecca Amadeo, followed by Joshua Korn.
Hello, Mayor Venice, City Council, and all supporting workers. My name is Rebecca Amadeo. I'm a resident in the River Road neighborhood. I am disabled and I am very upset that I'm forced to attend in person and can't give any comments over Zoom. And while today I am housed, homeowner even, I have been your unhoused neighbor living in my vehicle a lot over the past decade plus. I am an overnight volunteer with Egan Warming Center. I strongly oppose the proposed parking ban ordinance and the fundamental approach of fining and criminalizing homelessness. Mayor, this ordinance will disproportionately harm the people your proclamations claim to seek to honor, welcome, and protect. Councilor Groves, I lived in my vehicle in Ward 8. If you want existing laws to enforce that can help this situation, please put your attention on the abusive slumlords around the city, like the several that abused me into homelessness over the years. Councilor Clark, I reject your statement that we need to protect people from the danger of sleeping in their cars. It is paternalistic, misogynistic, and disgusts me. I thank my neighbors who have shown up to oppose this tonight and to bring up other important topics, such as divestment from genocide.
And especially for those who, like me, it is very traumatic to speak about our homelessness in front of people who wield state violence but demand that we are polite and calm to keep them comfortable. Thank you, neighbors, and free Palestine.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our next speaker is Joshua Korn, followed by Tara Garkow.
Regarding the smart meters that eWeb is basically trying to force upon a lot of us, some of us choose to have a healthy, radiation-free home and still have a working analog meter on our residence. And these meters have been in use for decades. Some of them, they work fine. They don't need to be replaced. And this is free of toxic radiation. In my work, I basically do electromagnetic health research. That's what I do. And this toxic radiation from these devices has been considered by the World Health Organization to be a 2B carcinogen. So this is clearly a toxin that is being emitted by these meters. These AMI meters, also known as smart meters, are not safe. They're only considered by the FCC safe because the FCC is a captured agency. I've discussed that here with the council in past meetings, but this is basically when an agency is essentially regulating itself due to the revolving door of the agency hiring people from the industry itself. And this goes on in many industries, including the pharmaceutical industry. But why is this happening in terms of the smart meters? Well, it comes down to surveillance capitalism. Surveillance capitalism is where basically data and surveillance of the community and the people is the new form of currency. And smart meters are the tool of this trade, at least one of the tools of this trade. So please stop eWeb from violating our current contract, which doesn't have any terms about forcing these meters on us, but simply requires us to pay for our services. And now with these letters that their attorney is sending our residents, they're threatening to shut off our services if we don't submit to this toxic radiation emitting.
Thank you, Joshua. Your time is concluded. Our next speaker is Tara Garkow, followed by Donna Lynn.
Hi, Mayor Venice, city councilors, city manager. My name is Tara Garkow, and I speak to you as a resident of Ward 1 and a representative of the board of directors at the Springfield Eugene Tenant Association. I spent the last 5 years working as a case manager up the street at Lane County's housing agency, and before that I worked at a local mental health agency as a housing navigator. There's so much work being done to combat houselessness in this city, and with all due respect, I find Councilor Clark and Councilor Grove's statements about us doing nothing incredibly insulting. You all know that Eugene is one of the worst housing crises in the state of Oregon. We actually have the unfortunate award of the highest homelessness population per capita and the second highest housing costs in the entire country. The facts make it clear that for lower income people in Eugene, it is already nearly impossible to end the cycle of poverty. With this knowledge, why would the city of Eugene now make it even harder to escape that cycle? It is essential to recognize that many individuals and families living in their vehicles and RVs are doing so out of necessity rather than choice. The lack of affordable housing options and the growing homelessness crisis have forced many people into living in vehicles as a last resort. These individuals are already facing immense challenges, including economic instability, lack of access to health care, and discrimination. Punishing them further through unreasonably strict regulation and increased penalties only exacerbates their hardship and does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness. Councilor Ye said that she was shocked at the lack of public comment on this issue. With only one person who publicly testified on a critical issue such as homelessness, it is clear that not all sides of this issue have been heard. We must have a council that is direct and transparent in its work, not attempting to sneak further criminalization of the homeless inside otherwise innocuous ordinances. Thank you for delaying this vote, and I urge you to remove the harmful recommendations that would only further Eugene's homelessness crisis. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Tara. Our next speaker is Donna Lynn, followed by Cindy Allen.
Hello, my name is Donna Lynn. I've been houseless here in Eugene off and on for about 16 years. I moved here from California with my happily never after. He left me and took our daughter. I fell into a deep depression. I contracted bacterial meningitis, almost died. Was in a coma for a little over a month. Just wake up. Just wake up and hear that my hero, my best friend, my mom, doesn't have long. Please bear with me. When I woke up from the coma, I had no memory of what occurred between my ex and I, or the whereabouts of my daughter. And then the news of my mom. Let's just say my downward spiral was so fast. When I hit bottom, I dented the dirt. Got a black eye and a few missing teeth, but I'm okay. I live in my van here in Eugene. Having trouble getting back on my feet. The only stability I've had past 3 years is my cat and my van, which I can barely afford. My van, that is. I worked really hard to get it. I did it legitly. No funny business. I'm just trying to live the best I can with what I know how. What I have may not look like much to others, but it's my everything.
Thank you, Donna. Our next speaker is Cindy Allen, followed by Madeline Cohen.
California, Arizona, Texas, Maine, and other states with huge utilities such as PG&E and California have successful opt-out programs that allow people to keep their analog meters and to replace a smart meter with an analog. Lane County's EPUD has a smart meter opt-out. There's extensive video history at Families for Safe Technologies, Friends of Amazon Creek, and other internet sites that document Dr. Paul Dart's presentation to eWeb, the 2013 opt-in vote, public comment sessions, the smart meter documentary, Take Back Your Power, lectures in Eugene with leading experts in RF radiation and smart meter concerns, Josh Del Sol, director of Take Back Your Power, Daphne Tackover, Katie Singer, Dr. Martin Paul. Video of these programs were sent to the eWeb board and are part of the Eugene Smart Meter record. They document the many health issues of RF radiation, increased inflammation, changes to the heart and brain, altered endocrine function, trouble sleeping, increased rates of cancer, etc. The smart meter cybersecurity risk and vulnerability of a centralized grid, fires, DC to AC switching causing dirty electricity on the wiring, Fourth Amendment violations, increases to the bill, etc. January 24th, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before the House Select Committee warning about Chinese hacking of our grid system, electric and water. He also mentioned malware component chips. It was the same warning that General David Petraeus made in Take Back Your Power. The eWeb opt-in changed to an opt-out in 2018, and I sent my letter in wanting my analog meter and not a smart meter, and heard little from eWeb about this from 2018 to 2024. To send a letter during the winter months saying, unless I choose a smart meter, my utilities may be shut off is very wrong. Why this sudden urgency to put a smart meter on every home in Eugene? Let the people who want the analog meters keep them. That's what other utilities have done. I'm a person with extreme EMF sensitivity because of an implant from an accident. A letter from my doctor is on file at eWeb, a public-owned utility.
Thank you, Cindy. Your time is concluded.
Cindy, could you remind us too? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Madeline Cohen, followed by Jacob True.
Good evening, Mayor Venice, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Madeline Cowan. I live in Ward 2. I'm testifying today to state my strong opposition to the proposed vehicle camping and any measures that criminalize being unhoused in our cities. I'm very privileged to be housed currently, and I recognize the vulnerability that people have shown sharing the stories of homelessness with you tonight. I agree with others in that this proposed amendment would further criminalize the many Eugene residents that are living in vehicles. This simply is not a viable solution for our unhoused neighbors. The city must continue to expand existing resources and develop new programs to support unhoused neighbors and individuals and families living in their vehicles, not further burden them with the threat of impoundment or fines and fees that they cannot pay. Many have brought very viable solutions to you tonight, increasing safe, legal parking zones with sanitation solutions, affordable housing funded by taxing on the many vacant affordable homes, and other many very realistic solutions based in humanity and love for our neighbors, not criminalization and hate. I hope you've been taking notes, and thank you, Councillor Leach, for your leadership on this issue. Good night.
Thank you, Madeline. Our next speaker is Jacob True, followed by our final speaker, Spencer McIntyre.
Good evening, everyone. Jacob True here, he, him. Mayor, city councilors, thank you. Normally I'm here from Eugene Springfield Democratic Socialists of America, but tonight I'm here in my personal capacity as a parent and resident of Ward 1. I oppose the efforts to impose greater restrictions and penalties on poor folks living in their cars. I'm a tax accountant. Right now is one of the absolute busiest times of year for me. I'm running on an hour less of sleep due to daylight savings time and having some young kids. I see a lot of folks' finances, and most everyone here that you've seen talking to you, and most of the folks you represent, are just one or two crises away from living out of their cars. Criminalizing poverty doesn't make people stop being poor. It just makes poor folks poorer. Forcing folks living on the margins to have yet another burden placed on their precarious positions is not only cruel, but bad policy. Are you expecting folks to sell their remaining meager belongings or their car to pay for the fees that you've levied upon them? How would that help house our neighbors? Criminalizing the poverty of working class folks will not solve Eugene's homeless problem. Housing will. I grew up in Santa Clara, and I want to commend the efforts of the Santa Clara Neighborhood Association to emphasize that, yes, homelessness is a housing problem. I encourage folks to read that book. I haven't read it myself, but I'll take a look at it later on if I get a chance, probably after tax season. Let's see. So we need a city council that'll fight for low-income housing. Social housing paid for by the government for the benefit of the people is the best and most straightforward solution. The misplaced priorities demonstrated by spending more money on the police and carceral solutions rather than housing is a big part of how we got there. I don't agree with Alan Zelenka on all that many things, but I definitely agree with Alan Zelenka that that this isn't a simple problem that's been developing just now, but it's been going on for a long time. So go for you with that. Let's see. I lost my place. Terribly sorry. I do like Grove's proposal that whenever housing is taken away from somebody living on the street, that we replace it with 3 safe sleep sites for people who used to be living in their cars. I like that a lot. So I'd look forward to a proposal along those lines if you get a chance. Thank you now.
Thank you, Jacob. Our next and final speaker is Spencer McIntyre.
Hello, City Council. My name is Spencer McIntyre, and I'm a resident of Ward 2. Thank you for hearing all the comments tonight. I know it's been a long evening, and I will try to finish it off strong. I'm here to voice my strong opposition to the parking ordinance and any policy that criminalizes folks experiencing poverty and homelessness. You've heard people tonight speak about how this affects a variety of different demographics, but tonight I want to share a story of how it affects single mothers, families, and children. Mayor Venus, tonight you spoke about Women's History Month. Let me tell you all about a woman who fought to secure mine and my family's survival with the resources she had at her disposal. In 2008, during the days of the recession, my mom, a single mom of 3 kids, moved into an RV, and all of us into an RV after our house was violently foreclosed upon. We lived in that RV for a little over a year after the foreclosure of our house, and that at that time was worth less than what my mom had actually already paid towards it. We resided in the RV while we sought affordable rent and a job that could pay a living wage for my mom to support us on. The 4 of us survived in that RV, all while she encouraged me to continue to get a quality education, which eventually led me to having nearly my entire college education funded. I share this to paint a picture of the realities of how people experiencing homelessness actually live and who we actually are. Without having alternatives where people can go to live in their homes, RVs, and vehicles, without offering affordable rent, living wages, accessible healthcare, harm reduction services, and other services that help folks meet their basic needs, passing an ordinance like this is a cruelty, forcing folks who already live on the fringes even more into the fringes, grasping to their dignity. These people are our neighbors, our artists, our musicians, our first responders to overdose, our friends, our workers, and beyond that, these are human beings navigating times with extreme wealth disparity. Instead of offering help and safe alternatives, you are casting out our most vulnerable by waging a continuous assault on the poor. It is not a crime to be poor. Councillor Groves, protecting our whole community starts with protecting our most vulnerable, and protecting our most vulnerable protects our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Thank you very much. That was a very powerful evening for us. I deeply appreciate all of you coming out and taking the time to speak to us on these issues. I don't know if there are counselors that have any comments or questions. Counselor Ye.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I wanted to thank everyone for coming and for the folks who shared personal stories. That can be hard, and I want to thank you for coming and doing that. Several of you made a comment about how the title was very misleading, and in retrospect, I have to acknowledge that's true. Sometimes we are in it so much that we know, and we don't all. I did not recognize that it was not as transparent as it should have been, and that may take council working with staff and seeing how we can make sure that titles that go out give people a clear picture of what that topic is going to be about. So I think that's something that we can definitely work on, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you all again very, very much for your really valuable testimony, and we'll return to these topics. Thank you again, and we are adjourned.